finally from Arkansas. We picked the boat up on Thursday in Arkansas at the factory tour, which I'm sure you guys have seen by now, and it is time to start getting everything rigged up. So today we're gonna get all of this mounted up on the boat, get out there, get the break-in procedure started, try to get all that done, and then hopefully tomorrow go fishing. So next video is gonna be rigging, and it's gonna be a long one. First thing we're gonna get done in today's video is get everything mounted up. So we've got two Solix 15s, a Solix 10, and a Garmin 12 to get mounted on this boat. So we're gonna go with a single 15 at the dash. We got a single 15 in front of the motor in the back, and then we got a Garmin 12 and a Solix 10 in the front of the boat up in the bow. So we're gonna get mounting plates on, get everything mounted up, get everything tied down, and then start running cables and wires. All right, so we'll jump into that next. Holes drilled. One important thing is you take a larger size drill bit than the hole you drilled and you spin it backwards in the hole to kind of chamfer it a little bit, and that'll take away from the clear coat and stop from future spider cracking and things like that. So that's what we're gonna do here next. Alright, now we've got it all cleaned up, we're going to get the plate cleaned up here and then get it mounted, get the bolts in, tighten it down from the back side. We forgot to put the little covers on, so now we got to pull it back off. So these go on before your bolts go in. That way you can snap the cover off.
Don't pull it so tight, sweetheart. Those are nice.
Yep. Yeah, we'll need some of that stuff later. Alright, now we gotta get all the cables fed through. Ethernet cable, power cable, the Y splitter cable for each transducer. First. With this Bass Boat Technologies mount and the splitter cable for the port and starboard side imaging transducers, you want to start with this one because these just barely fit through. Then everything else can go in after that. Ethernet, power, and that should be it. So now we're going to get the gimbal bolted down and the graph on and plugged in. Alright, so it's kind of tricky to get the nuts in. Let me see here if I can get that on camera. Up underneath back there. Alright, so it's kind of tricky to get the nuts underneath. Let me get down in there. And then back nuts back there. Okay, so a trick, put a piece of tape on the back side of your wrench and then drop your nut in facing the proper direction, set your washer on top, and then sneak it down inside of there and then tighten it from the top. Let's see if I can't get a view of what she's doing here. gimbal as far back as it'll go, and good. Cool. I'm super happy with this mount. Super happy with this mount. This looks good. I can see all my gauges. It's nice and clean looking. Bass Boat Technologies mount. That's who hooked us up with this one. So like it a lot. Have some final fitting to do, getting the position of that gimbal proper so it pushes against the stopper. We just got to kind of tweak it a little bit in and out until we get it just right. All right, that thing is good and rigid. Very nice. So this is a Finngear mount. We got these from Richard at Quality Boat Center. So I'll show you here. It pivots 360 degrees, and this is adjustable. You pull this pin out and it can tilt. So that'll allow us to figure out where we're going to mount this in the back here, and put this Solix 15 for the trolling for Christine's here. So we're going to get that figured out, kind of lay it out, and come up with the best spot for it.
Okay guys, so this is what we are going to be using for our grass, just because we want single power running to all the grass. We don't want any interference. So Sea Clear Power actually came up with a harness with some pretty cool terminals that we're going to be using here. So I'm just going to start routing the cable, so bear with me. So I routed it back through the battery box, which then I was able to go into the splash well port, actually run it through that way over into the power box. So then now the fun part starts. So I'm going to run it all the way through the gunnel up to the first tee off, or the Y, to the dash for the dash mount, and then I will continue all the way up into the bow for the bow fish finders. I'm able to get it from the battery box, or actually I'm sorry, the power box, over through. And YarCraft has these great fiberglass, I guess you would call it just supports to run all your cables into a nice little bundle here. And there's a couple of them in here that I'm going to string them through. And then I will get it up to the dash. So I've got both of them, our Y for the dash already through here, and then the other cable is the one that runs up to the bow. But so what I'm gonna do, since it's not quite long enough to make it all the way up to the dash, it's just a little bit short of how I had to route it around the batteries and all of the water connections in the back. So it wasn't quite long enough, but the cable running from the fish finder for power is long enough to make a junction point right behind the shifter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back and connect it back here. There's just a little bit more space for me to do so. So a trick I like to use is a PVC pipe, actually, just cut long enough to route in past all these cables long enough to get up to the front for me to actually thread it through the front and bring it back. So you're going to want to cut it short enough where you're going to be able to pull it off of the wires. I suppose you could leave it, but then it's loose, shaking around. But what I like to do is run it through, run the cable through it, bring it back, and then pull the PVC pipe off. So what this does is it causes, or it actually stops you from getting wound into the other wires and having actually a clean shot to go back to your connection point. So I will show you, after I get the wire fed through it, what I'm talking about. Threaded through. So as you can see here, the PVC pipe, it's a really nice raceway just to thread that wire through without actually getting caught on any of your other cables. So once you get your wire through, all you got to do is just pull your PVC pipe out. And there your wire is hanging there perfectly straight. Okay, so then I'm gonna unattach this, leave this hanging here, because we also still have to run our Ethernet port wire. So I'm gonna do the exact same little trick that I just showed you. Take this here, just so it doesn't get moved from where I need it to be, and then I'm gonna keep routing up forward. I have all of the power to the console currently. I'm gonna take a break because we gotta take some parts apart to be able to run it up there due to the enclosed boxes from this year. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quickly show you the Ethernet cable, how I do that from the front side.
So up underneath the console here is where I'm going to mount the Ethernet hub. To link everything together, going to go right in here somewhere. Going to get that screwed in place here. I found it incredibly difficult to get in there with the seat fixed here. So 6 bolts, popped it out. Now we can get in there. That was not fun. With this C-Clear power kit comes with a Perco switch that we're going to be mounting. So that way, it's just a battery shut-off switch. Kills power to all the graphs at night, because the live scopes and stuff like that, they do suck a little bit of juice. So if you leave your boat unplugged for an extended period of time, you will drain your batteries down. So we're going to get this installed down in the battery compartment on the side there, and then hook up the power cables, and then we should be good to go. So their connectors are crazy simple. Okay, unscrew this guy here. This is all from that C-Clear Power kit. See how nicely that smushed that whole wire down to that? Feed it through. Get it down along the side of this cone that's down inside of there. And then you just tighten this thing up. Boom. Good connection. Then we're fused here. This is for the graph for the back. So I'm actually putting this on the other side of this switch because I want that to be part of the switching all together. So that's going to go on there. So when I flip that switch, this graph will have power. Same time as all the other ones. Okay, inline fuse, 5 amp in the kit. It's all included with. You just tell them how many fish finders, and they give you however many fuses you need. Now I just need to get this bugger mounted down in yonder way here, and that's gonna be pretty tricky, but not too bad. And then this comes off the other side of the switch, and that's gonna get hooked to the battery, and then all the grounds go to the ground there. Let me get that knocked out. All right, got that screwed in place. Next, we just gotta make our connections, and we'll have powered all the graphs. We're gonna finish. We're just doing all the work in the back right now, so we're gonna go finish up mounting the graphs in the bow and get power, and then we'll be done. So in the meantime, while I was finishing up that C-Clear Power, the wife finished up making all the cables look nice back here for the transducers. We still gotta mount them yet, so we're gonna zip tie that up nice and tight, but that's just a rod sock. So we had a spare rod sock. She cut it up to be able to make a nice cable protector. Worked out good. So right now we're getting the fish tape that's going up to the dash. All the transducers taped onto it. We're gonna run everything all at once. The two side imaging transducers and the Ethernet cable. Making sure to tape down the actual cable itself and the very front of the plug to protect that as it's going through, so that we end up nice and tight like that for everything.
And also stagger it.
Yeah, they can't all go through the same thing at once here, so Ethernet leading the pack, and the two side imaging transducers here, and then I'm going to be back here and I'm going to help feed cable while she's pulling on the snake.
And before we did this, we made sure none of the cables were entangled to make it a lot smoother when we pull it through.
Yep. So she's got the snake up there, and I'm gonna feed cable from down here. Up there, she's got it. So we're gonna continue pulling everything through. Can you untangle it from the fish finder there?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna pull everything as far as we can while we're sitting here. Go ahead. Okay, you're there.
So then we have to untape it and then redo it again once we're going from the front to this middle point.
Yep. It was a little too hard to try to snake all the way from the dash all the way back to this back box. So we kind of did a halfway point in the rods locker there on the side. So So after she gets them through them first couple of wireways there, we ran the fish tape from underneath the console back to here. And we're going to tape the transducers and the Ethernet plug onto that, and then get her up underneath the console and pull them through and make those connections. So now she's connecting up the transducers to that Y cable, and that Y cable is for the dual side imaging transducers, the one on the left, one on the right. So they're labeled port and starboard. So we put the blue mark on the blue piece of tape on the transducer for the port side, and she's connecting that into the port side connector, untangling everything, getting it all ready to get bundled up there, making all the connections for the Ethernet box up underneath. And then we just fished our cables through the bow. Here's power, and then the two Ethernet cables, one for the trolling motor and one for the 10-inch Solix up here. And I'm starting to debate on where I'm going to put this dual stack mount here, so that way I'm happy with how it looks when I'm live scoping. So I got to sit here and kind of figure that out and play that around, and I'll show you what I come up with. Great job. The wife did a great job at tucking all the cables. There's the transducer cables coming down. There's all of our network cables. Everything's purdy and tucked and nice and neat. Good job, pretty lady. Okay, so I've come up with a location. We're going to mount these graphs right here. So now I'm getting the transducer cord, power cord, and Ethernet cord for the live scope underneath through the rod locker. We had to take the tubes out of the rod locker. They're back there. She's getting everything plugged in, and then we're going to screw this down all the way up in the very front of the rod locker, and that's where we're going to be mounting this bugger. So she's got to go through that little hole in there, up as far as she can get. So what we're doing here is we're getting the Cornfield Crappie live scope mount for the Tarova. There's a sheath that goes over the cable. It's a little tricky, but it'll go as you get. It's helpful with two people. One to lead a screwdriver in front, the other to squish the cable into the sheath. So I'm gonna continue on doing this here. Right now I've got the live scope bracket mounted. We've got this on the trolling motor, 3 bolts here. Now we get the actual transducer mounted. It's just the one piece. And those will be that in 4.
They're right next to you. Drilling the holes now for the Garmin and the Solix mount here. So we got a big access hole. Christine's gonna jam her arm through there, and we're gonna get this thing bolted up. We're almost done. Okay, it has been a long afternoon. What time is it? 3:49.
3:49. We started at about 9 o'clock this morning, so 6 hours in, and we are just doing final touches here. I've got to get these transducers mounted up, and then that's the last thing. And then we're going to go start the break-in. Well, the first thing I got to do here is get the transducer plates mounted on the transducer. Hopefully you can see all that. All the hardware, plate, transducer. There's 6 little washers, 6 little machine screws. Easier to put them all together ahead of time. That way you can just grab and go. Okay, so we need to get these guys in, and you want to orientate this little extra tall tab right here. You want to have those in line with the ones that are on there to start with. You'll see what I'm talking about. However you line them up to begin with, you want to keep them all in line with each other. So if you have this, see this little extra tab? Hopefully you can. If you have it clocked one way, you want to have the other one clocked the same. I start out with them both right in line with the extra little tab that's on there. And that way when you put everything together, they are all the same. It has to do with an angle thing. It's for you to keep track of what angle you're using it on. And for getting it leveled properly. If you read the instructions, it'll give a better explanation than I'm doing. But let's get that started in there. Hey honey. Alright, so for the side imaging transducer, it's a 13 millimeter. We're just going to get this snugged up. We don't want it super tight because we need to be able to adjust it. Get it snugged up. Okay. I want to make sure that we can fairly easily move this, but not too easy. I mean, I want it pretty stiff, but not bad, because we're going to be mounting our plate on there. And then same thing for this one. I think this is going to be a 12. And it's got an Allen wrench, a 3/16 Allen wrench on the other side. Like I said, we're not too concerned about angle and all that. We're going to set that later. We just need it to be tightened up so it's not flopping around when we go to mount it. Next in line is going to be grabbing this plate. So this is a Transom saver plate. I highly recommend these. I don't think I would ever do an install without them. They go on the back of your boat,
and you can screw your transducers into this instead of into the back of your boat. So that way, if your placement, especially with these side imaging transducers, your placement and all that, you're going to end up moving it. It might not be perfect. It's better to do this and move it around on the plastic multiple times than it is to have a whole bunch of holes in the back of your boat you got to fill with silicone. So I got to find this 9/64 drill bit. I think I left it up top. Oh. Alright, so it's a 9/64 drill bit, and I'm going to choke this drill bit up just about as far as I can, because I only need to drill in just as deep as the screw goes. I don't really want to drill too much deeper, okay? Because I mean, there's no need to go all the way through the transom if you don't have to. So I'm going to choke this thing up, and I'm going to try to keep this as a drill guide, get it placed where I want it. I just ran the screw in here so that way I can see how far deep I'm going to go with this, with the drill bit. 9/64. Now I'm going to mount this, and you don't want it to be too close to the bottom of the boat. It doesn't need to be right on the bottom of the boat, and especially since if you look here, I've got a bunk that's going to be right where this thing's going to go. So I'm going to get it as level as I can eyeball. Go in here, start reverse until I'm through the clear coat, and then I know once I'm down all the way, I know that that one is deep enough as it needs to go. So, whew, all right, and it looks like I'm through the transom anyways, even though I tried not to be. Yep. So, alright, so now I got one side screwed in and set. I'm gonna punch the hole for the second side. And then we'll be coming back and silicone and all this once we get everything kind of placed where we need it to be. So we'll come back and show you wrapping it all up. Alright, now that we got everything glued down, silicone down, I'm going to take, I don't mount my side imaging transducers down close to the water like they say they're supposed to, because otherwise they just kick up too much of a rooster tail. That's what the high speed transducer is for, so I can pick up temp and bottom when I'm running. I leave that one down lower. I actually mount my side imaging transducers up above the water line, just barely, not by much, but just enough where when I'm on plane, they're not kicking up a big giant wake and a rooster tail. So this one here is going to go up here somewhere like this. I'm going to try to eyeball kind of level-ish first, get the screws buried in, and then we're going to get this one here mounted. This one we are going to make sure that we're just half and half at the water line. You want the bottom of the boat to be right about half here. That way this thing is in the water when we're on plane, and we can read our speed when we're going 60 plus miles an hour. So, alright, I'm going to get these screwed on here. I'm going to need... So I'm just making sure I kind of have it where I want it to be. I'm just going to pre-drill I'm just going to pre-drill the holes out of the plastic just a little bit. I don't need to go all the way into the glass. I want to be careful about that. And then I take, so they send with too long of screws for these. If you see, they end up going into the fiberglass there. So I went to the hardware store and I got 3/4 inch, same screw, stainless, you know, it's just a self-drilling screw. They call them sheet metal screws. Same screw, just in a 3/4 inch length. That way, when I bottom this thing out, it doesn't go into the fiberglass. I don't need any extra poking holes back there. So we're gonna get this guy mounted up. If I can get it in there. So should have left those a little looser. Get that one started. So when I figured about where I wanted to have it placed, I made sure I drilled my holes about in the middle of the slots there. That way I had adjustment. If I found I needed to go up higher or down lower, I still have, like now I'm in the water, so I can tweak it a little bit, get it right about there. I know I'm out of the water with this side imaging here. And then kind of just eyeball level for now. We're going to get out and do a full-on leveling sequence and all this stuff. We're just going to eyeball it to get it close. And then go ahead and tighten them down. Okay, now this guy here, like I said, I'm just going to eyeball kind of level for right now. I'm not too worried about it. We're going to go through and double check all that stuff later. So now I'm good to go for tightening this up a little bit better. I'll have to get another wrench on the other side. Oops, I swapped that out. Where did I go with the damn 13mm? Underneath my butt cheek. That's where things normally wind up. I'm the king of setting something down and losing it. Oh yeah, it's right here. Get that snugged up tighter. Let's see if this one. Yeah, that'll go. Plenty tight. Now we're gonna do the same for this guy here, but this one we're gonna want to make sure that we do have it at the water line. So loosen it up. Get it in here. Make sure I'm clear of my bunk. And like I said, I want to make sure I'm eyeballing level and that I'm definitely below the water line here, because I want this to be able to pick up speed. You know, I want to be able to read bottom going pretty fast here. So making sure it's well below the water line, I'm going to drill my pilot hole right in the middle of my slot. Okay, just like that. Kind of centered in the middle of the slot there. Yep. And then we're going to grab our same shorter screws. Get those started. One started here. Get the other. And then we're going to kind of hold her in place, and I know that I was pretty close to being right in the middle of the slot there, so kind of halfway snug it up. Double check again. Yeah, it looks good. It's below the water line. It is almost completely below the water line. You just got to make sure you got it. You got an angle on your transom here, so you just got to make sure that you're below the water line, all the way across that angle, and then you're good to go to snug this one up. Kind of eyeball that level again. That looks pretty good there. Get one tightened up good and tight. Ugh. 12mm for this one, and the Allen wrench. So now I know that I ride back heavy. Our bow goes in the air when I'm on plane. So I'm going to kind of tilt this, make sure, I think I've almost got it, maybe one spot up higher yet. We'll have to see how it reads, but I know that she sits back heavy in the water. So that to me looks a little over exaggerated. So I think right about right there. We'll see how it reads when we're getting the water. Snug this one up good. All right, this side is done, and now we're gonna finish up the other side, clean up. We're gonna go ahead to the launch. All right, both sides are done. Like I said, I just got them kind of eyeballed level, and then we're gonna run it and do the leveling trick later on here. For now, we're just gonna clean up our mess and go start breaking this thing in. All right, guys, we are out here getting this first 2 hours of the break-in done. So you got to run it, varying your RPM for 2 hours. Pretty much do it non-stop, up, down. You can only go wide open for 60 seconds at a time. So we're just out here getting that just started now. And it's a gorgeous evening out here on the Bay of Green Bay. Just absolutely gorgeous. So I can't wait to play around with my new favorite toy. All right, so one more thing that we had to finish up from yesterday was getting the bow mount stabilizer on. So this thing comes with, here, I'll have the wife hold the camera here. So this is the one from Minn Kota. You take this top knob out and you slide this off, and I cut this off with a cutoff wheel. So you get it in there, you kind of figure out where your height's gonna be. And then this bolt, when it goes through that hole, goes into this groove here. So all you do is you just cut it off in the middle of whichever groove ends up lining up for your location. So I chopped mine off. I had to cut off 2 for this one. And then there's a nut in the backside here. Don't lose that because it's just loose. And we kind of got it figured out on where we're going to mount it here. So I want a little bit of up pressure on this trolling motor. So I'm going to hold it in place, kind of press up a little bit, not too much, but I want some up pressure on there to really lock that motor in place. And then the way this one works is you just pull the strap over. It's actually really nice compared to the ones that we used to have. But so I'm just going to get this thing placed, pre-drill some holes. And we got some stainless hardware here. We're just going to run it in. But we're going to start with just doing one hole at a time. Only one hole at a time, and then make sure, you know, start with one hole, put a screw in it, then do the next, put another screw in it, and then do the next. That way you don't end up with a hole pattern that doesn't match up. So we're going to start. I'm going to hop up in the boat, and we're going to do that. All right. So like I said, a little up pressure here. Make sure we're happy with where we have it. Get this first hole drilled. Actually, how does that work? Okay, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to get it in there the right way because of the drill. So I might just spot the hole. Like I said, reverse first, get through the clear coat, okay, and then finish it. All right, now we're gonna get one screw in. And I like to do everything by hand when I'm dealing with the fiberglass. Just, you have such a higher risk of chipping out your glass when you try to do it with a screw gun or, you know, a drill. So all I need to do is just get that started in there, and then I'm going to go around and I'm going to spot the next hole. Try to get a little bit more length. In reverse, getting a spot on there. Okay. So now that we got 2 screws in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to chamfer these holes with a larger drill bit. I'm going to drill it backwards. That way you don't chip out the glass. You can see how right here, even when I started screwing that screw in, it just started to cause a little chipping. You come in here with a larger drill bit and spin it backwards and give yourself a chamfer, but make sure you spin it backwards. And that'll kind of clear out that clear coat and stop it from chipping and continuing on with cracks.
There we go.
Okay, so earlier when I took the 3/8 drill bit and I went to go chamfer these holes, me being me, I screwed up and had the drill in forward, and you can see it chipped. Okay, so it chipped all this. Well, it's still covered by this. It's still covered by this, but I don't want to leave these chips here. So we're gonna mix up some 2-part epoxy. We're gonna fill this back in. Okay, make sure we clean it up real good, wipe it out, fill it back in with 2-part epoxy. Let that sit overnight, let it harden, and then come back and re-drill that hole. All right, because I don't want to leave these little chip rough marks right here. So for now, I put 2 screws in, drilled the other 2 pilot holes, and now this time I'm going to make sure I have this thing in reverse before I go about doing this. Yeah, we're backwards. And all you do is just nice and slow. Just make sure you get a chamfered hole. Okay, that way it ends up with a nice, smooth, chamfered hole. And when you screw your screw in, it won't chip away that clear coat. So we're gonna mix up that epoxy, get that fixed, and yeah. All right, sounds good.